check, 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 check. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 hello. Check, 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 check. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 hello. Check, 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 check. Hello, hello, hello. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Check, 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 check. Hello, 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 hello. Check 1, 2, 3. Check 1, 2. Check, 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 check. Hello, 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 hello. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hello, hello, hello. Check, 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 check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Check, 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 check. Great. You check, you check. I will check the recording. The recording. You want to record once? Check one last time. Recording. Check 1, 2, 3. Mic 1. Check. Check, check, check. 1, 2, 3. Mic 2. Check, check, check. 1, 2, 3. Mic 3. Check, 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 check. Sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Check, 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 check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Check, check. Hello.
Hello. The event will start in 15 minutes. I request everyone to be seated and keep your mobile phones on silent. Thank you. evening, everyone. The show will start in 5 minutes, but before we begin, there are a few announcements. Please check that your mobile phone is kept on silent, and also please do not film the proceedings using your camera, as there will be a live stream available on YouTube. After the chat, we will have a question and answer session. So, as you listen, I encourage you to note down your concise questions and keep them ready. Your questions will be entertained on a first come first serve basis. There'll be 2 mics on each side, so when the Q&A floor opens, I request you to queue up behind the mics when the floor opens, not beforehand. And the people in the first 4 rows, and especially in the center, are requested to remain seated during the program, as there are cameras recording it for live stream, so as to not obstruct them. Yes, we look forward to the program. It begins in 5 minutes. Good evening, everyone. I am Durga, and it's an absolute thrill to welcome you all to this special occasion at the Indian Institute of Science. It is clear that AI holds tremendous possibilities as an Archimedean lever to realize human potential and to reach its benefits to everyone. Guided by science and by values of dignity, respect, and trust, for us in the scientific community, this is not a race for power, but a quest to empower. At this exciting juncture, Iisc is delighted to host a conversation between two deep minds of our time, facilitated by someone who exemplifies the bold imagination of youth. Together, they help us reflect on AI, on intelligence itself, and the future we create with it. Before we begin, a reminder to keep your phones on silent and remain seated throughout the program. And now for our guest of honor. We all know him for his extraordinary intellect, his groundbreaking work at Google DeepMind, showing the world how AI can fundamentally transform scientific discovery. But beyond the accolades, he represents something essential. At a time when AI evokes both excitement and unease, he brings a rare combination of both ingenuity combined with responsibility, of AI powering science for insight and intelligence that expands the horizon of what humanity can achieve. As we begin our surge ahead with AI, we are keen to hear from one of the people who constantly opens new frontiers in science with AI. Please join me in welcoming Sir Demis Hassabis. Demis, it's a pleasure to have you here. And now for our next speaker. It's none other than our own director, Professor Govindan Rangarajan. Professor Rangarajan is one of the world's foremost scientific minds. Being a physicist, mathematician, as well as a neuroscientist gives him deep perspectives about the nature of the human mind, complex systems, technologies, and how they shape human possibility. As the director of Iisc, he stands at the forefront of our deep tech research ecosystem, nurturing AI talent and guiding humanity at the highest level. The interaction of these two transdisciplinary minds, taking on questions that define the technological and human arc ahead, promises to be a fascinating one indeed. Please join me in welcoming our beloved Professor Govindan Rangarajan. Our facilitator today is someone who moves so fast, his only real competition is Moore's Law. But to many of us here, what makes him special isn't just his speed, it's his spirit. Across startups, storytelling, and frontier technologies, he embodies optimism, curiosity, and the zeal to constantly evolve. As we power forward in AI, he reminds us that our energy and our imagination may well be our greatest asset. Please join me in welcoming one of the most compelling voices shaping young India, Varun Maya. I now request Varun to take over the proceedings.
Amazing. This is a really large audience. How many of you are in STEM? Wow. It's amazing. So we've got our audience here today. So thank you for joining us. To me, it's an absolute honor to share the stage with both of you. And, I've been a fan, Demis, since, I first saw some of your stuff, 4 or 5 years ago. I actually wanted to start with a question that's very personal to me, right? Which is, we've seen everything that's going on with AlphaFold. We've heard about the work going on there. But how exactly does it translate to India? What I mean by that is India is known for low-cost generic drugs, right? We're now getting the GLP-1s to India. What is the exact post-process between you starting out with that tool all the way to it becoming a drug that people can use in India?
Well, look, first of all, thanks for having me here, and it's fantastic to be here at the Institute, and thanks for coming. Look, I think in India, and what we tried to do with AlphaFold in the beginning was crack an amazingly hard scientific problem, but also one that would have many downstream benefits, especially in things like drug discovery. So with AlphaFold, but also some of our other scientific work like AlphaGenome, we've been developing tools that I think can accelerate drug discovery and also help with disease understanding, including things like rare genetic diseases and so on. So I think all of that will impact India, but also all the world in the next few years. We collaborate actually with a lot of contract research organizations in India already with isomorphic labs that we spun out to build on the AlphaFold work. And I think I'm also very excited about how our general AI systems like Gemini will help with providing healthcare information to everyone in the world. And I think, again, I'm very excited about the impact that could have here in India too.
That's a very high quality problem to pick up, right? Which is, hey, how can we solve protein folding? But I think, and this is a question to both of you, right? And it's a follow-up question related to this, which is, I think both of you have been in science for a very long time. How does one build scientific taste? Like, how do you know what kind of problems to go after and what kind of problems are not worth going after?
Okay. You are asking about how to build scientific taste in AI systems?
In general, like how do you as a person build scientific taste?
So I think scientific taste, usually you, as a grad student, you learn it from your PhD mentor. I think that's when you first encounter it. But if you talk about developing scientific taste in AI systems, I think that's a very interesting and very hard problem. There have been some interesting attempts like the Ramanujan machine, which they try to sort of replicate the intuition that Ramanujan had. And also, but on the other hand, if you use standard things like reinforcement learning from human feedback, that sort of tends to average things out and you tend to revert to the mean, and I don't think you get interesting things from there. What I think maybe is, maybe you build a custom-built LLM, which then is mentored by a master scientist, and so that's master scientist, the LLM acts like an apprentice to the scientist and you give constant feedback. You need somebody with a lot of commitment and time to do it. But if that may be an interesting way, because that is the way we learn from our mentors, so that may be an interesting way to do it. And maybe, who knows, you may have future generations of AI who trace their lineage to a human master, and you may have schools, like the Demis Habbis School of AI Systems or Terence Tao School of AI Systems, which think in a way akin to how they think, about which problems are important, which problems are not important. Because I think if you do it on the average, I don't think you are going to get much. I think it has to be much more, personalized in some sense, but I think Demis may have a different take on that.
Yeah, no, I think the question of taste, you can break it down into intuition and creativity. It has aspects of both of those things. It's probably the hardest thing in science, and I think will probably be the hardest thing for machines to be able to mimic. And I think that's good. I think that's what separates the great scientists from the good scientists, human scientists. I would say, every one of you here is, of course, great technically, but then to really discover something new, ask the right question, formulate the right hypothesis, requires good taste. And I think that comes partly from graduate studies and learning from professors and the great professors that you have here, and certainly that's why it was important. I learned a lot of that during my PhD at UCL with my professor, Eleanor Maguire. And, but I think you can only really develop great taste through doing as well. I don't think you can just passively learn it. I think you have to do it and develop it. And it's a little bit mysterious what it is, I would say, altogether. So we'll have to see if machines are able to develop it or learn it somehow. But I think they're going to need to do active experimentation in the way that we all do through grad school to really understand what it means to do science at the frontier, at the cutting edge. And so, I think it remains to be seen. Maybe we'll understand better what taste is at the end of all of that.
Amazing. So you're saying if you run a lot of experiments, you eventually develop a sense for what experiments are worth spending your time on. That's amazing. I have a question for my wife. She texted me on WhatsApp in the morning and she said, you should ask Demis this question, which is, we've seen AlphaFold. What is in the future of medical AI? Like, what is something we can look forward to?
Well, look, AlphaFold, I think, was just the beginning. So, of course, it was this 50-year grand challenge in science and in biology. And understanding the structure of a protein is incredibly useful for understanding disease and eventually developing drugs. But it's only one small component of the drug discovery process. It's an important component, but it's a small component. So we are trying to develop many other technologies adjacent to AlphaFold at Isomorphic, mostly in biochemistry and chemistry area, to develop the right compounds that will bind to the right part of the protein, but also other properties we care about, like the toxicity, the absorption properties of these compounds, to make sure that actually in the human body, they do the right things and don't have any side effects and so on. And in some ways, those things are even more complicated than the protein structure. But we have a lot of belief that this is possible because of AlphaFold, the success of AlphaFold, which was thought to be an almost impossible challenge, and we were able to do it. So I do think these methods can scale to these very, very difficult problems. And we have some very promising results at Isomorphic and developing these technologies further. And I hope that eventually we'll be able to bring down the drug discovery process. It takes on average, say, 10 years to come up with a new drug. Bring that down by a factor of 10 to a matter of months, maybe even possibly weeks. And I think that could be possible. It sounds science fiction today, but then so was finding the protein structures, of all the proteins known to science, 200 million proteins known to science. We've managed to, fold and put out predictions for all of them now. And that was probably, would have seemed impossible 10 years ago. So I think the same kind of thing will happen over the next decade with drug design.
I think this is a fascinating use case of AI, right? Which is that there is a person sitting on stage right now whose work is going to be used by so many people who are, sick and need those clean drugs over time. So thank you so much for all your contributions. Demis, I actually want to switch tracks here, and I want to talk about something totally different, which is a personal passion of mine, which is gaming. If we're working on a game, we're working on, I would say, we wanted to make a world-class game, right? And we wanted to do it bootstrapped. But you've been a game developer, right? So you've worn many hats. Game dev was one of the first ones you wore. And you worked at Bullfrog back then. The minute Genie came out, and I saw it, I spent like 5 seconds looking at the screen, and I was like, wait, I need to use this, right? And then I used it, and I was like, wait, okay, at least it can't tell a story yet. How long do I have left? Like, what date should I release before? And what's the next 3-4 years of game development going to look like?
Yeah, so I saw your game. It's a great looking game, by the way. Thanks for sending me the video of it. And I love game design and game development. That's kind of how I started my professional career, but also my journey into AI. So, when I was a teenager, I was, as you say, I was working for Bullfrog, which at the time was probably Europe's premier development house. I did some really creative games, simulation games that AI was the core part of, like Theme Park. And actually, really, that's when I sort of decided, as around about 16 years old, that AI was going to be my career, when I saw how much enjoyment people got from interacting with this game AI and the potential of that. And I think it's come full circle now, where AI, games used to be the cutting edge of where technology was developed, graphics and AI, and also hardware, like GPUs were, of course, invented for games. And now we use it for AI development. And now maybe AI's got good enough, it can help with game development, like you're saying. And I think it's going to help with many things. So, for example, creating assets and graphics, 3D models, I think the technologies are pretty good now, and probably in the next year or two will be pretty amazing. From just a concept art, it could probably create the 3D, the asset. I think what I'm most excited about is new types of genres of games that might be possible now that we have AI. So for example, big, massive multiplayer online games that are populated with game characters, NPCs, that are actually smart and can advance the storyline and things like that. I think also there'll be very useful tools for bug testing, auto-balancing the games. But then you mentioned Genie. Genie 3 is our world model, so what you're able to do with that, for those of you not familiar, we just released a kind of a beta version of it recently, where you can just type in a prompt and you get a playable world. You can only play it for 1 minute, and then it's sort of like a dream, and then it disappears because it can only stay coherent for a minute. But I think over the next 4 or 5 years, we'll be able to extend that time. But as you say, that doesn't necessarily, it's like an interactive movie, and it's fascinating to try it, but it doesn't make for a fun game yet. That's still going to require game design, game mechanics, all of the amazing things that the games industry has built. So it may just facilitate faster prototyping and faster iteration of ideas, and then hopefully maybe will be a new golden era of game development, like it was when I was in games in the early 90s, where you could have small teams that could experiment with new, really creative ideas because it was fast enough to prototype and build, cheap enough to build those games, that you could test out quite experimental ideas. And hopefully these tools will allow us to do that again in the games industry.
Very cool. I have a question to both of you, okay? And this is a question about a difference between the average person that I've spent time with and both of you, which is both of you seem very cross-functional, right? Which means that, you know, one day you could be playing chess, the other day you could be making games, the next day you're in life sciences, the next day you're in AI, so it's like you're cross-functional, and you've done a lot of the same, right? You've done a little bit of chaos, then you've gone and you've said, hey, let's do satellite-based courses. And I think the word for this is polymath. And I think it's just very fascinating being around polymaths because the range of conversations you can have with those people are just so wide. How does one truly be a polymath? I know it's a tough question. The answer might just be, hey, you're born with it. But, you know, I'm going to shoot my shot anyway.
Well, maybe others may have a different phrase for it, you know, jack of all trades and master of none. But still, I think it is just the basic curiosity. You're curious about so many different disciplines. There are so many fascinating things to do that you just get into different areas. I think it is that basic curiosity which drives all this.
Yeah, so I thought a lot about this, and I think for me at least, I've always had an insatiable curiosity from when I can remember. And even in my games career, that happened. So I started playing chess for all the England junior chess teams. But then I realized there were many other cool games out there like Go and poker and really interesting things as well, just beyond chess. And a lot of chess players just stay with chess, and that's all they play. And so even in games, I could feel myself drawn to, there's so many interesting things, as the professor says, that are interesting in the world. But there's also another thing too, which is that I think a lot of the best inventions, especially in the modern era, will come at the intersection of 2 or more subjects, right? And you can think of DeepMind, when we started it, as a kind of combination of neuroscience, engineering, and machine learning, right? It was sort of the intersection of all of that. And now, you know, you look at isomorphic, it's an intersection of machine learning, chemistry, and biology. So I love those areas, and I think a lot of the fastest progress still now as well, I'd encourage you to become expert in 2 or more areas and then find the connections between them, but also maybe the analogies between them. And there are a lot of interesting analogies when you look at things from a first principles point of view. And then the other thing too is that I think I've just been drawn, my kind of favorite people from the past, my heroes are kind of the polymaths really, like you said, like Da Vinci or Aristotle, who I feel like didn't really see the boundaries between even, not just the sciences, but even art and science and philosophy. And I like that approach, and I feel these are all about finding out about the world, but just using different techniques. So in the end, if you're curious about how the universe works, you should be curious about it from all these different viewpoints. And I suppose, for me, building AI as this sort of ultimate tool for science and discovery, that's kind of given me the excuse to learn about a lot of other subject areas, which I've loved doing, because we can apply AI to those areas.
Professor, do you think we're making a mistake in science in India by having too many siloed, ways of learning? Because I feel like, sometimes when I speak to people, they say, hey, I'm a mechanical engineer, and there's no way I'd be interested in any other type of engineering. Do you feel that's a mistake?
Yeah, I think it's a mistake. I think probably the original mistake was done when we abandoned universities and started, we also are an example of that, of starting specialized research institutions. I think, we lost that, crosstalk between different disciplines. And we have become so siloed, even, law is different, management is different, everything, medicine is different. We are trying to remedy that, by bringing medicine back here and things like that. But I think it's a serious issue that India faces, and is going to become a bigger issue with AI coming in, when you really need this intersection of disciplines, so it's going to be a problem.
Maybe I can just, I hope more of you become multidisciplinary. Maybe I can just give a couple of pieces of advice or tips on maybe how to do that. I think there's a couple of things you need. One is, one reason it's hard to be multidisciplinary is, of course, one has to be world-leading expert in at least one domain, right? This is also why siloing has happened in departments, because you have to have that, otherwise you can't contribute. But at the frontier of, discovery. But then, what I've at least done is, and I think everyone can do, is develop techniques to quickly learn to maybe a grad level other subject areas, right? How do you transfer your own learning? Of course, this is what we're trying to do with AI systems, but you can also do it with your own mind of, find those connection points, understand it from what you know from first principles, so you can quickly apply it very fast to a new area or new domain, at least to a sufficient level of understanding, so you can combine it with your expert area. And I think the other reason I've seen in university systems that people don't do this more is, I think it takes a little bit of humility, or maybe confidence and humility, kind of both together, to become a beginner again in some other area when you're already maybe a world expert in one area, or very expert in one area, let's say machine learning, and then, oh, I don't know that much about biology, so I'm going to be willing to learn from the experts, start again, and be willing to put the effort in to do that learning. And I would encourage everyone to do that. It's really worthwhile. But I think sometimes maybe the academic system doesn't reward that side of doing things.
Fantastic. I have a question on general intelligence, and I'm sure everyone has this question, right? Which is, for a very long time I had, and even before the entire AI wave, I grew up reading Asimov, and I just said, one day we're going to have AGI, right? But as I got older, and I saw, Gemini come out and a bunch of models come out, I said, this feels like AGI. But then the goalpost moved, right? And we said, no, but it has to do this. So I made a joke out of it, and my Twitter username is waiting for AGI. Because I'm just like, it's the kind of internal joke I have with myself, because nobody else gets it. But a question to you, Demis, what is a capability you would see where you'd go, that's AGI?
Yeah, I agree. Look, my definition of AGI has never changed. So, which I can tell you is, we've always defined it, and I've always defined it since I started working on this 20, 30 years ago, as a system that can exhibit all the cognitive capabilities humans can. Now, why is that important? First of all, because the brain is the only existence proof we have, that we know of, maybe in the universe, of a general intelligence, right? So that's also partly why I studied neuroscience, because I wanted to understand the only data point that we have that this is possible, right? And understand that better. And so that's the definition I use. It's quite a high bar, because it means if you wanted to test the system against that, it would have to be capable of all the things humans can do with this brain architecture, which is incredibly flexible. And it's clear today's systems, although they're very impressive and they're improving, they don't do a lot of those things. So true creativity, continual learning, long-term planning, they're not good at those things. And another thing that is missing is general consistency across the board at capabilities. You know, of course, in some circumstances, they can get gold medals in international maths Olympiad questions, like we did last summer with our systems, but they can still fall over on relatively simple maths problems if you pose it in a certain way. So that shouldn't happen with a true general intelligence. It shouldn't be sort of a jagged intelligence like that. So there's still quite a lot of things missing. I think the kind of test I would be looking for is maybe training an AI system with a knowledge cutoff of, say, 1911, and then seeing if it could come up with general relativity like Einstein did in 1915. Right, so that's the kind of test, I think, true test of whether we have a full AGI system. And I think we're still a few years away from that. But I think that's going to be possible eventually, but it's clear today's systems couldn't do that.
Professor, do you think about AGI?
Well, I'm just a consumer of AI right now, not an expert, so I'll defer to Demis on this question. But the way it's going, probably it'll happen sometime, but I think it's enough of a useful tool right now that everybody should use it. We need not worry about AGI. That's what I tell all the students and faculty. That's a good enough tool for you to use right now and accelerate your research. So, yeah.
Interesting. Demis, how do you balance both? How do you balance the commercial pressure of this is Google, you know, we have to make money, and also this is DeepMind, we have to do research. How do you balance the two? Because there's some short-term pressures, long-term pressures. I'd just like to know how you think about this.
Well, look, there are those competing pressures. The answer is we just do both to the maximum. And that's one advantage we have with our size, is we can explore both to the limit. So we have a large research team. I think we have the broadest and deepest research bench of any organization in the world. And but we also have, you know, we're like the engine room of Google. DeepMind these days, and we have to support that too, right? That's what in the end brings in the revenues and the money and the funds to do more research. And so we have to get that balance right, and roughly half my team work on those kinds of immediate priorities and support for those things, and that's very exciting too, because building foundation models like Gemini is on the shortest path to AGI, in my opinion. But then we have half the team who are doing the next frontier. And it's sort of my job as the leader of that organization to protect the blue sky research and make sure it has room to flourish and deliver maybe on an 18-month, 2-year time scale or more. And we make sure that we're not just overly focused on the near term. So the short answer is we need both. And we've got, I think, that balance pretty good, even over the last decade of, you know, new innovations, but also plugging that in to the latest products, and so billions of people around the world can benefit from it.
Professor, do you think about the same problems when it comes to funding for science in India? Like, how do you balance what you want to do versus what there are grants or funding for? Is that a big challenge?
It is always a bit of a challenge because now, you know, as you know, India does not have infinite resources, so it has to prioritize resources which are, you know, priority areas for the country. So there are these national missions like the AI mission, the semiconductor mission, and quantum mission, and things like that, where there are deliverables that you are supposed to deliver on. But that, again, of course, conflicts with the general attitude academia has, where you, as Demis said, just do blue sky research. But I think on the whole, we have been able to balance the two. So there are enough avenues for getting funding for basic research. And even with applied research, I think very interesting open research problems can come out of even pursuing applied research. So I think one can do the balance of the two. But funding in general needs to increase in India because we are still at 0.7% of GDP. I think at least we should go to 2%. That would be much more comfortable. And you know, given our aspirations, I think that would be warranted also.
You know, I have a worry, right? Like, and this is a personal worry, which is that $200+ billion of India's exports is IT services. And I read this post recently, which is, it's just XYZ amount of tokens, right? And it's a worry because we have software engineers who are good, but not great. And we do have some great ones, but some of them end up going abroad. But the ones that stay behind, they are competing now against models that are just getting better at doing software. Do you have advice for people in software right now who are working, on these projects and seeing AI rapidly improve?
Look, I think a lot of areas are going to get disrupted and change. I think with change, there are challenges, but also come opportunities. So what I would recommend every engineer today, wherever they are, is to lean into these AI tools, get incredibly good at using them. And I think there is a lot of untapped potential there for the youth of today, wherever they are. And what one engineer can do can probably be 10x of that. I think new startups are going to happen that couldn't have been done before. And so in some ways, it equalizes the playing field because everyone around the world has access to the same tools, pretty much. And so it's about everybody figuring out how best to integrate that into their workflows, and then we'll see what the different new industries or new services come out of that. But I think there will be some new, maybe higher level versions of the things that we do today.
So you're saying there might be a higher level version of software where you just prompt the thing. But for a lot of engineers in India, it just feels like it doesn't feel like the craft anymore because you just feel like you're writing in English.
Well, maybe there'll be a different sort of craft. But first of all, we're not there yet. But secondly, when I was starting off in games, we used to write it in assembler language. Okay, but then when I was writing Theme Park, we then went to C, C++. And of course, now we have Python and all these even higher languages. So one could view this as a continual abstraction that is happening. And I think that broadens, actually, the access to creativity to more people can try out their ideas and build their ideas. So maybe it's a slightly different skill set that's needed. But going back to this question of taste, I think that's going to increasingly become the valuable differentiator.
Amazing. So I have one last question for both of you, which is, what is something from your field or what you do every day that is very exciting to you right now, but the world hasn't heard of yet, and that you can potentially reveal without violating NDAs or whatever, that we can look forward to a few years from now, from both your fields?
Okay. Well, from limited knowledge that I have, I think what is going to surprise people is the progress in math. Because if you look at the general public, math is always thought of as something inaccessible and populated by geniuses, which of course it's not. But I think when people see that AI is making these tremendous progresses in math, they're going to be surprised, I think. That such a difficult, what's thought to be a difficult field can be, cracked open by AI. Because, it is based on axioms, it's based on definitions, and it can be, your predictions can be either proved right or wrong. So those make it much more accessible to AI than other fields. So I think that's good.
I think for me, the thing I'm looking forward to is maybe AI in the physical world. So I think robotics is going to come of age in the next 2-3 years. Still a lot of things that have to be solved, in my opinion, but I think we're getting to the point where there will be some breakout moment. I think also AI understanding the physical world. We've tried very hard to do that with Gemini as a multimodal model, probably the best in the world at that, so that you could have an assistant that's maybe on your glasses and comes with you or on your phone and understands the world around you and the context around you. Obviously, we're seeing self-driving cars and things, I think, about to become a reality around the world. And then I'm excited about things like automated labs that maybe speed up again, the discovery, scientific discovery, not just in theory, but also in the practical realm too. So I think that's all going to come in the next maybe 5 years or so.
Very cool. I've seen a glimpse of that in the movie Transcendence, where you just give AI a couple of hands and then it keeps, improving itself. Thank you so much for your time. I want to open the floor to the audience. I'm sure we have some questions from the audience, so we'll take 2 or 3. And then we'll run it through the spam filter, which is me, and then take it to the people on stage. Can we? Yeah, super.
Hello. So, hi Demis. I wanted to ask you a very different question. How long will it be when I will be able to run some GPT 5.2 or Gemini 3 level AI model locally on my humble 6 GB RAM smartphone? How long will it take? And right now, what is the roadblock in making the AI models more efficient, power efficient, compute efficient? Is it the inherent architecture of the, sorry, is it the inherent nature of the transform architecture? Or are we missing some important piece of hardware which is yet to be engineered or made?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think actually these models are getting efficient by about 10x every year. So one answer to that is wait a couple of years and you'll have, or even 1 year, and you'll have probably Gemini 3 level capability that can fit on your phone. We're developing our next set of open source models, Gemma, which are built specially for edge devices. And I think Gemma 4, the next ones, which should be coming up soon, you'll be pleasantly surprised how powerful they are on the edge. And so it's all of the above. And in fact, the DeepMind India office here specializes in efficiency, and they lead the way in making these models more efficient, through distillation and many methods actually. So the newer models are the smaller models, the edge models are probably only maybe 1.5 generations back from the absolute frontier. So it's not going to take long for those to be available on your mobile devices.
Yeah, also, just one question. Since we know that all the AIs right now run on a subscription model, so there is a fear that companies might not want to invest in these open source models because they would cut their own business revenue. So what do you think of this?
Well, look, I think there's a place for closed source models and open source models. The thing I mostly worry about open source has nothing to do with the commercial part of it. It's actually if one subsequently finds a flaw or vulnerability in that system, and these are very complicated systems, as you know, to build. So it's very hard to be sure before you put it out there that it has no vulnerability or some misuse case. If it's open, if it's behind an API, you can recall it, you can patch it and put it back out there. If it's open source, what are you going to do? I've not had a good answer to this problem.
Yeah. Thank you.
Namaste to everyone. So I have a question. How do we use AI to deepen first principles thinking without removing the struggle that builds real understanding? So do you have a framework or steps which would make it easy for us?
I think it's down to the individual, It's like the internet, computers. You can use them in ways that will degrade your thinking, but you can also use them in ways, we were talking earlier about becoming a polymath. Well, today's a dream in a way with YouTube and all the information on the internet you have. If for someone who wants to learn something very quickly up to, say, undergrad level, it's all there, like the best lecturers in the world, all of that. So that's one way you can use this technology. Obviously, with AI, if you use it in a lazy way, it will make you worse at thinking, critical thinking, and so on. But that's down to you as the individuals. No one can help you do that. The technology is sort of neutrally sitting there. You need to be smart enough to use these new technologies in ways that will enhance your thinking rather than make it worse.
Yeah, I get the point what you're trying to tell, but also, as you told, we have so many resources for learning. So we might get into the pool of learning from which resource and like listing down the resources. So what would be the better mindset for us to narrow down the resource and get into the learning pool?
I think the number one thing that you should do when you're in school and other things is work out how you learn, learning to learn. That's the number one thing. I'm surprised that is not taught more in schools and so on. Figure out how you learn best. There isn't going to be one answer for everyone. You need to think that through, how you work best, what environment, what modes that you work and learn best in, and then double down on that.
Did something work for you, like the art of how to learn?
There'll be a little bit, yes, but it's not possible probably to explain it in 1 minute. So it's many things. It's just sort of developing the mind. For me, actually, it was games I trained my mind on. Made multiple games that exercise different parts of, the thinking process, and getting really good at getting capable at that. So it's kind of the way we developed AI for our early days of DeepMind, using games as a proving ground for testing out your own ideas.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hello. Mine's not a very technical question, but you mentioned studying neuroscience as the only data point that you have for general intelligence, right? So we have all this talk of moving towards neuromorphic designs and everything, but why do we want to move forward to an intelligence that is similar to ours? Not only does it lead to a loss of capital for a large percentage of people, it also leads to a loss of identity, I feel. And also, there are a lot of things that we are bad at, which AI is already doing. Like, when you're in a needle in a haystack kind of situation, you can ask it to do literature reviews or pool large amounts of data together to find something specific. Why not make an alternate intelligence that works in synchrony with ours instead of trying to replace human intelligence?
Yeah, so I wanted to be clear about this. It's not about replacing human intelligence. As I explained earlier, the thing about the human brain is it's the only thing, you can think about it as a Turing machine, approximate Turing machine, if you want to think about it mathematically. We have to understand what is true generality. So Turing showed that with the Turing machine, and our brains, I think most people would accept like some kind of approximate Turing machine. So you sort of need to, if you're interested in general intelligence that can be applied across the board, then it has to have roughly that set of capabilities. At least that's the only set that we know of, right? So other animals are not general enough, for example. So they don't have big enough prefrontal cortexes and so on. So it's not really about replacing humans, it's about understanding what is general intelligence. I think that the tools, as to why the industry is doing that, is because we find with these general tools, they can transfer to the specialized domains. So it's probably going to be more efficient to develop a general structure that can be used in these more specialized domains than develop hundreds of specialized systems. That's the economic, that's why you're seeing the economic pressure to do that. So there's two different things there. One's a scientific question, which I think is very valid, of like what is a general system and how would we answer that question? And then the other is a more economic question.
I think we'll take one last question and then we should wrap.
Good afternoon, Demis. It was great listening to you. So my question is that all the current AI models, be it VO, Genie, be it large language models, much like social media, they are optimizing for engagement in some sense. They are not driven by some higher level intent. The next frame prediction, next token prediction is not a high level intent. And in all our AI systems, let's say talking about AI for science, it is a human scientist who is communicating that higher level intent with the AI model, right? But whenever the human is in the loop, that restricts the bandwidth and that slows down the amount of compounding you can have. So what is Google DeepMind's solution for this intent discovery and generating good intent and communicating into the models?
Yeah, well, I think that describes exactly the situation today, right? So these are tools that, basically they're passive tools that we as the human scientists are imbuing the action in, right? The energy into it. And I think that goes back to this question of taste and also what's missing, my test of this Einstein test I'm proposing, right? This general relativity test. And we don't know what that is, that capability right now. And maybe that's good for now because that's for the human scientists to do and to supply that. And I think that's a good phase. I think that will actually create a new golden era of discovery, which is what I expect to happen over the next decade or two of us as human scientists and human experts using these tools to very quickly advance the frontier. But we'll probably be supplying the hypotheses and the theories and then using these tools to help quickly explore that hypothesis space.
But when one is trying to do rigorous science, right, then the systems are severely limited by the communication bandwidth with the human agent. So won't it detract from all these promises of solving fusion, solving cancer, and all these difficult problems?
No, not really. I mean, we've done AlphaFold with humans involved. It's okay. So it would be faster to do it that way, sure. So maybe eventually post-AGI, you'll have systems that can be closed loop. But there are also risks with those kinds of systems too, right, as you know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I just got a quick time check, and I think we have time for 2 more questions. So, just shoot.
Hi. Thanks, Demis. I think this is really good. I mean, for me, it's a fanboy moment to have you here. And I have a question around memory. So amongst all the neurological aspects, I find memory to be very intriguing. Like the way, hippocampus works and how we try to model episodic memory, semantic, the long term, short term. Like sometimes I get glimpses of what happened in my childhood. It's not about weighted averaging, right? It's some glimpses that remains. And for example, if you hear any keyword and that strikes something else for you and probably for someone else something else, how is foundation models trying to handle this problem? How are we planning to handle this? Because currently it's very systematic, like something that you can interpret. But as far as I've seen, memory is a very abstract concept. It's very difficult to understand how brain resolves it. What's your take on it?
Yeah, so I agree with you. It's one of the most interesting things. That's why I studied memory as well, and hippocampus, as you probably know, and imagination. Partly because machines in those days were very bad at those things. To some extent still are. So we're kind of, I would say, badly approximating the hippocampus at the moment with context window, right? So really the context window is more like working memory, but because we only have working memories of, 7 digits plus or minus 3 digits or something. But of course a computer can have, like Gemini, 1 million token context window. But the problem is, I think that's still not as good as episodic memory, where it's kind of brute force, right? You're remembering everything, when in fact, most tokens are irrelevant, and you want to only remember the important things, which is the way human memory works, right? You remember the emotional things actually better than the neutral things, so both positive and negative. Maybe that's one of the functions of emotion. And so we don't need to remember everything we've seen today. We'll just remember some of the key moments that might be useful for learning or for future use or for imagining new or simulating new scenarios. So I think even in the realm of AI and machines, where we can have millions of, or maybe tens of millions one day, or billions of memory units, you still pay a cost of searching that memory, right? So I think of our video models, or our project Astra, which is supposed to work on glasses, it can record maybe 20 minutes of video. That's about 1 million tokens, right? But first of all, that's not a lot of time. Secondly, to then find something in that is quite expensive, right? Because you have to look through everything. And so I think, ironically, one of the things we maybe are missing is forgetting, and or if you want to talk about in computer science language, garbage collection, so that you actually compress what you're remembering and maybe consolidating it as well, if for those of you neuroscientists in the audience, so that it's just efficient, the things that you are remembering, and you have to sort of search through.
Awesome, thank you.
I have a follow-up to that, which is, in high school biology, I read that the amygdala and the hippocampus fire together, right? So like you said, when you're very emotional, you tend to remember things. Is there an amygdala equivalent for LLMs?
Not at the moment, but maybe there should be. I don't think you'd want it to be like emotional or amygdala like the human, like we have. I think it would, but maybe some value judgment at the point of writing the memory that makes some kind of value calculation on how useful would this memory be for future learning or future behavior. Probably would be pretty useful, and it's something that we are researching.
Very cool. Sorry.
Okay. Hi, Demis. So my question is about AGI. We talked about AGI. So do we need some incremental improvements till we get there, or do you think we'll hit the wall at some point and we'll need some breakthrough in terms of theory to go ahead and reach the point?
Yeah, look, there's no wall in sight, so that's what I will say. Our Gemini models are improving every generation. We're very excited about that improvement. The way I'd phrase it is, in my mind, it's clear to me, very clear to me, I'd be nearly 100% certain about this, that the kind of foundation model techniques we have today will be a key part of the future AGI system. I think the only question is, will they be the only part, the majority, the key component, like to what extent, right? And so I think that is still an open question. So, and that relates to, okay, if it's not the only thing you need, then what are the one or two other, probably only a small handful of things, maybe one or two new breakthroughs are needed. Maybe in continual learning, long-term planning, some of the things we've discussed today, memory perhaps, right? I could give you some candidates of what those might be. But just scaling up the existing systems could work too, right? Because in the past, we and others, and I've discussed this for 20 years with colleagues of mine, of like, oh, what would you need to understand concepts? Maybe you need a separate module for that, abstractions and so on. And a lot of those things, language even, were, didn't actually require anything specialized in the end. It was just the general system scaling. The right general algorithm transformers with some reinforcement learning was enough to scale. So I wouldn't bet against that either. So maybe it's 50-50 right now, whether that's enough or you need, and of course, when I say that's enough, there's still innovations going on in the foundation models, or you need one or two really big breakthroughs still required. And so for me, it's an empirical question. So of course, at DeepMind, we are pushing forward both the innovation and the scaling to the maximum we can. And then we'll see what happens.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody, for
Thanks a lot.
joining, and of course, to both of you for being on stage and giving us your time. I think I'll call Durga up on stage, or you're already up on stage, okay, to just deliver the closing note and make sure we get some pictures.
Demis, Professor Rangarajan, on behalf of all of us present here, I thank you for your time, your wisdom, and your inspiration. Thank you, Varun, for helping us navigate these fascinating areas. Please join me in one more round of applause for our wonderful panelists, Sir Demis Hassabis, Professor Rangarajan, and Varun Maya. I now request Professor Rangarajan to present Demis and Varun with a token of our appreciation. Now we'll have a group photo with all three of our speakers. A selfie with the audience. Thank you everyone for your presence here, and there'll be high tea outside. I request you all to join us. Thank you again.
Good luck with the games.